that is such a hard question to answer because, yeah, I mean, I got the email, I really couldn't believe it. And then just to put it in context, I'm not a person who cries. I cried. You know, you've been tapping away in this dark room for all this time, and then somebody's actually acknowledged what what you've done, and yeah, it just feels great. I'm really happy. I've been writing short stories for about 10 years now. Before that, I was working as a script writer, and yeah, I've been writing for about short stories about 10 years, and then I did the Hey Writers at Work scheme, and just thought this novel that's been in my head forever, just push on with it. The book is based on the true story of my great-grandparents. She was a second generation Irish woman, and he was a ship's cook from Barbados, and he took her off to sea with him. But she told my father that when they were going round Cape Horn in a storm, she saw angels in the rigging. And it's just like, that woman had an extraordinary story to tell. And I just, and I was also really wanted to tell it, because every time people found out that I had a black great grandfather and a white great grandmother, they said, "Oh, that must have been very unusual at the time," and it actually wasn't. It wasn't that unusual, but those stories haven't come out there. So I thought it was really, really important to tell their story. Bright and Samuel told stories of the sea, of men who'd fallen overboard, of brightly coloured flying fish, of birds who hitched rides and stayed with them for miles. Bright watched Ellen, amused at her silence, as usually on his homecoming she couldn't stop talking. He brought her a present, a seahorse, a tiny thing. She held it in her palm and listened as Bright described finding it on a beach in West Africa, where he and Samuel had washed their feet in seawater warm as a bath. She decided to speak at last. "Which part of Africa are you from, Mr. Jordan?" Samuel laughed. "I'm not from Africa," he said, and she felt her cheeks burn. She was so stupid. It would have been better to have stayed silent. "My ancestors came from Africa," he said, "but I was born on a small island in the Caribbean Sea. It is called Barbados." "Have you ever been on board a ship?" Samuel asked her, half turning in his chair to look at her. She shook her head. "You should take your sister," Samuel said to Bright. His voice always sounded as though it had a smile in it. "You don't want to be putting more nonsense in that girl's head than is already there," said Mammy, gathering bowls. Samuel got to his feet and nodded his head to Mammy. "Thank you for your hospitality," he said. "I'll be returning to the boarding house now." "See our guest out," instructed Mammy, and Ellen went with Samuel to the door. "Would you show me?" Ellen asked. "The ship." "Your mother might not like that," he said. She didn't answer, and there was a moment when neither of them spoke. But then, "Yes," he said, "of course, I will arrange it." She stood in the doorway, watching his light shape walk away in the darkness, and she was aware that something strange had happened to her body. It was like the centre had fallen out of her, left her drifting in the wind.